In this lesson, we're going to learn how to attach two elements and make them one. Alright, so we have one object, but we have two elements. To show this, let's go ahead and recap. Let's select Element Mode under Editable Poly, and you'll notice that we have two different elements. To make them one, we need to connect them with geometry. So to do this, I'm going to go to Polygon Mode. Simply left-click on that, and then you'll notice that these polygons still stay selected, as if we're still in element mode. Go ahead and left-click to remove that selection, and then select this vertex, or excuse me, this polygon on the inside, and then you're going to hold down Control and left-click this polygon. Whenever you're selecting objects, holding down Control will append a selection. So meaning I can add to that selection. To take away from a selection, you'll simply hold down Alt and then left click, and that will remove whatever you've clicked on from the current selection. So Control will add, Alt will remove. Alright, so now that I have both of these polygons selected, I'm going to use a new tool, and this is called Inset. Inset will create a polygon on the inside of another polygon. So your current polygon selected, let's go ahead and go to Edit Polygons Rollout, and you'll see the Inset tool. Go ahead and click on the settings to the right of that, and this will bring up your toolbox. The toolbox is very helpful because it gives us options that go with our tools. So for example, we have this polygon selected. You're going to notice that the Inset type is going to be set to Group. If you left click on that, you have other options like by polygon. These are only helpful whenever you have multiple polygons selected, and it will change their behavior. We can talk about that later. Now you'll have your inset amount. We're going to go ahead and set this to an amount of 1, and this should give us a very small edge across the top. Okay, so let's hit OK on that, and there we go. You'll want to go ahead and do an inspection of your geometry. What we're looking for are any polygons that may be crossing one another. So what it may look like, let me hit Control Z one time. Let's hit Inset. If I take my amount way up here, notice that we get these weird shaded polygons. Okay, that means that the polygon has crossed over itself, and this kind of geometry is no good. We can't use it. So what I want to do is I want to take that amount down back to 1.0. Usually before you commit to that, you'll do a quick check over your geometry and make sure that you don't have any weird polygons like you saw before with that height way too high. So let's hit OK on that, and now we're good. Now what we can do with these two polygons selected is we can bridge them together. To use the Bridge tool, we'll go to the Edit Polygons Rollout and use Bridge. Now you have your bridge settings. If you left click on that, you'll notice that our toolbox comes up again, but you'll also notice that we have lots of different options here in the toolbox. We're not going to worry about these right now because I've got the result that I want at this point. So I'm just going to simply hit OK. So now that that has bridged together, we now have the interior of our arcade cabinet. Very, very cool. And that was done very quickly. So now what we want to do is we want to start working on the individual pieces of this arcade cabinet. And I'm going to start working on the screen. So how do we do this? The first thing that I want to do is I want to take this large polygon, and I'm going to actually extract it or separate it from the object because I want to make it its own object separate from this. So to do that, let's left click and select on that polygon. You need to make sure that you're in polygon mode first. Now that that has happened, let's hold down Shift and drag that out. You'll notice that this is kind of like cloning, but in this case we're using it with polygon mode, and this is actually allowing us to clone part of the mesh. Now we have two options. We can clone it to the element, meaning that it's still part of this object, but a separate element, or we can clone it to object, meaning that we'll clone it, but it's going to become its own object separate from this one. In this case, let's do clone to object. I'm going to call this glass. Notice that it is no longer selected. If we turn off polygon mode just by clicking on that, we now have two objects. Go ahead and just left click on those to see how that works. Alright, perfect. So now that I have that glass set right there, what I want to do as well is I want to go ahead and take this polygon and delete it out. Okay. Actually, you know what? Let's Let's actually make 2 copies of that. Actually, no. Let's do this. We're going to still keep that part of this. Let's just move this guy out of the way. So I'm going to pull him way out here, just kind of out of my vision. If that tends to get into the way, you can actually use another very useful tool, and that's called isolate mode. So let's select the arcade cabinet and choose this right here. Isolate, and you'll notice that our glass has disappeared. It hasn't actually disappeared. It's still in the scene. It's just not being viewed at the moment. If you turn off isolate mode, that will come back. Let's go ahead and go back there. What I want to do is I want to go ahead and create the section where the TV screen is going to, or the arcade screen is going to be located. So let's go ahead and create some segments. I feel like this is a little too wide. I don't want the screen to go all the way out to the edge right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Edge Mode. And I'm going to create 2 segments on each side of this arcade. Now this can be a little difficult to do if we were trying to just add in a loop using like the modeling tools here. So if I went to Edit and Swift Loop, what this allows me to do is to add an edge exactly where I click on. So if I left click here and here, it's added those edges. But there's no guarantee that they are the same distance from those edges. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a different method of adding edges. Let's hold down Control and hit Z twice to remove those edges. Go ahead and right click to stop using that Swift Loop tool. And let's select just one of these edges right here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this ring. A ring is a set of edges that are parallel to one another. And it's going to select all of them all the way around that object. Okay, so this is a ring around this arcade. Now what I'm going to do is with that ring selected, I'm going to use the Connect tool, and this is under Edit Edges. Go ahead and select on your settings, and you'll see that that will now create an edge that cuts through that ring. Let's go ahead and bump up the segments. Let's set that to 2, as I want 2 segments. Now they're not quite where I want them to be. I want them to end up right about here. So what I can do now is I can use one of the options in our toolbox called Pinch, and it's the second one here. If you left click and hold and drag that up, you'll notice that they spread further apart. Let's go ahead and bump that to about 66. Hit OK, and there we go. So now we have 2 edges that have been committed to our arcade cabinet. Perfect. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and take this polygon and I want to extrude it down to create my screen. Now we're going to talk about how to extrude in our next lesson.